A silence hangs over the land, vast, ancient, and deceptive. From above, it looks untouched. A wilderness frozen in time. Forests stretch endlessly toward the horizon. Rivers carve their way through valleys shaped by millennia. Herds move like shadows across open plains, but beneath this land, something breathes. Deep below the surface, far beyond the reach of roots and rivers, lies a force of unimaginable power. A reservoir of molten rock, restless, shifting, alive. A supervolcano, one of the largest on Earth. It does not roar, it does not tremble, at least not in ways we can always feel. It waits. Above it, the Earth exhales. Geysers erupt without warning, blasting columns of boiling water high into the sky. Steam hisses from cracks in the ground, rising in ghostly plumes against the cold morning air. Mud pots bubble and churn, thick and violent, as if the land itself is struggling to contain what lies beneath. This is not random, this is pressure. Heat rises from the depths, pushing against layers of rock, searching for release. Every eruption, every plume of steam, every trembling surface is a reminder. The ground here is alive, and yet life thrives. Through drifting clouds of vapor, a massive shape emerges. A bison. Its dark form moves slowly across the pale landscape, each step deliberate, unshaken. Frost clings to its fur, steam coils around its body as it passes over hidden warmth beneath the soil. It walks not away from the danger, but through it, because here danger and survival are the same. The heat that threatens destruction also sustains life. It melts snow in the dead of winter, revealing patches of grass when all else is frozen. It fuels rivers that never fully sleep. It creates a fragile balance, one where every creature, from the smallest microbe to the largest predator, depends on forces they cannot see. For thousands of years, this land has existed on the edge, not in chaos, but in tension. A world shaped not just by tooth and claw, but by fire and stone. A place where the ground beneath your feet holds the power to reshape everything in an instant, yet chooses for now to nurture instead. The steam thickens, the earth pulses, and life continues, unaware or perhaps unconcerned of what lies below. Because in Yellowstone, survival does not come from escaping danger, it comes from living with it. This is not just a wilderness, this is a living, breathing force. Welcome to Yellowstone. The steam rises again, but now it reveals something more. Movement. Across a frozen valley, a herd of elk drifts through the snow, their breath visible in the cold air. Each step is careful, measured, ears twitching, eyes scanning. They are not alone. In the distance, shadows begin to take shape. Wolves, low to the ground, silent against the white landscape, they move with purpose. Not fast, not yet. This is not a chase. It is a calculation. The pack spreads out, each member slipping into position, cutting off escape before it even begins. The elk hesitate. One misstep here is fatal. Suddenly, the stillness shatters. The wolves surge forward, explosive, coordinated. Snow erupts beneath pounding hooves as the herd scatters in panic. A young elk stumbles just for a second, but in Yellowstone, a second is all it takes. The wolves close in. This is survival in its rawest form. No hesitation, no mercy, only instinct. But predators are not the only ones who fight. Elsewhere, near the edge of a steaming thermal vent, a carcass lies half buried in frost. The air is thick with the scent of death. A grizzly bear stands over it, wishful and immovable, its breath rising in heavy clouds. Each tear of flesh is slow, deliberate. Then another presence emerges, a second bear. The tension is immediate, muscles tighten, heads lower. There is no warning call, no ritual, just a sudden violent clash. Two giants colliding in a storm of fur and fury. Snow sprays, claws strike. The ground itself seems to recoil beneath their weight. The victor earns more than food, it earns survival. Here, every meal is contested, every advantage temporary, and the land itself shapes these battles. Heat seeps through the ground, creating pockets of life in an otherwise unforgiving winter. Grass pushes through thin layers of snow near geothermal vents, drawing herbivores into exposed spaces. Spaces predators know well. The warmth sustains life, but it also reveals it. Nothing stays hidden for long. Even the rivers, warmed from below, refuse to fully freeze. They carve dark veins through the white terrain, attracting animals in desperate need of water and hunters who know exactly where to wait. In Yellowstone, the rules are simple. If you are seen, you are vulnerable. If you are weak, you are chosen. And if you hesitate, you are gone. There is no balance without conflict, no life without loss, because the same forces that give this land its life, the heat, the pressure, the hidden fire below, also ensure that survival here is never easy. It is constant, it is brutal, and it is everywhere. The wolves slow, their hunt complete. The valley falls silent once more. Steam drifts across the snow, swallowing the traces of what just happened, as if nothing ever did. But the cycle continues. It always does. To understand these battles, we must understand the land itself. Beneath the violence of tooth and claw lies something far older, something that shapes every hunt, every migration, every fragile moment of survival. The heart of Yellowstone does not beat in its forests or rivers. It burns deep underground. Far below the surface, a vast chamber of molten rock shifts slowly, endlessly. A sea of fire trapped beneath layers of solid earth. It does not sleep. It does not cool. It moves, rising, pressing, searching for release. And where that heat escapes, the land transforms. At the surface, the signs are impossible to ignore. Water explodes from the ground in towering geysers, driven upward by intense pressure from below. For a moment, the earth seems to erupt, steam and boiling liquid bursting into the cold sky before collapsing back into silence. Then, slowly, the cycle begins again. Time here is measured in eruptions. Elsewhere, the ground glows with impossible color. At the edge of the grand prismatic spring, bands of blue, green, orange, and gold stretch outward like a living painting. But this is no ordinary pool. The colors come from heat-loving microorganisms, tiny life forms thriving in conditions that would kill almost anything else. At the center, the water is near boiling. Toward the edges, as temperatures drop, life begins to flourish. Even here, life adapts. The surface shimmers. The water moves, not from wind, but from heat rising from below. It is a reminder that this beauty is not gentle, it is controlled chaos. And beyond the springs, the ground itself breathes. Thermal basins stretch across the landscape, dotted with vents that release constant streams of steam. Some hiss quietly, others roar like distant engines. Beneath each one, water is superheated, trapped under pressure, waiting for a fracture, a weakness, a moment to escape. The earth here is thin, fragile, alive. Beneath it all, unseen but ever present, the magma chamber continues its slow, relentless motion. It heats the water, it fractures the rock, it feeds the entire system above. Without it, Yellowstone would freeze, rivers would slow, winters would tighten their grip, life would struggle, then fade. The predators, the herds, the endless cycles of survival, all of it depends on this hidden engine. Heat is not just a force here, it is the foundation of everything. It creates the rivers that carve the valleys. It shapes the soil that feeds the grass. It determines where animals gather and where they avoid. It decides where life can exist and where it cannot. Even in the harshest winters, when snow buries the land and temperatures plunge, the heat below keeps parts of Yellowstone alive. Patches of earth remain exposed, water continues to flow, and animals, driven by instinct, find these places. Because where there is warmth, there is opportunity, and where there is opportunity, there is life. The geysers erupt, the springs shimmer, the ground exhales once more, all of it powered by something invisible, yet unstoppable, a force that does not hunt, does not flee, and does not rest. But without it, nothing above would survive. And from this heat, life begins. The storm does not arrive with warning. It builds in silence, wind sweeping low across the plains, snow lifting into the air until the horizon disappears. The land turns white, then grey, then nothing at all. And through it, something moves. Massive shapes emerge from the blizzard, their forms barely visible through the chaos, heads lowered, shoulders hunched, each step deliberate, unstoppable. A herd of American bison pushes forward, as it has for thousands of years, through a world that seems determined to break it. They do not run, they endure. A mature bull leads the way, his wyshal frame cutting through the wind like a living shield. Frost clings to his thick fur, forming a layer of ice that crackles with each movement. Snow gathers along his back, but he does not shake it off. Energy must be conserved. Every movement has a cost. Behind him, the herd follows. Cows, calves, younger males, all bound together by instinct and necessity. They move as one, a slow, relentless force against the storm. Beneath the snow lies their lifeline, grass. But it is buried, hidden beneath layers of ice and powder. The bison lowers its massive head and swings it side to side, using sheer strength to plow through the snow. Again and again, until finally a patch of frozen earth is exposed. It feeds, not because it is easy, but because it must. Steam rises from their bodies, curling into the freezing air. Heat radiates from within, built for this, designed by nature to survive where few others can. Their thick coats, their powerful muscles, their ability to conserve energy, everything about them speaks of endurance, but even giants are not untouchable. From the edge of the storm, beyond the shifting curtain of snow, eyes watch. Wolves. They do not rush in blindly. They observe, patient, calculating. The herd is strong, but not invincible. Somewhere within it there is weakness. A calf too slow, an older bison too tired. A moment of separation, that is all they need. The bison sense it. A shift in the wind. A movement where there should be none. The lead bull stops, lifts his head. Snow falls from his horns as he scans the white void. The herd tightens, instinctively forming a living wall. Calves protected within, adults facing outward. They are not defenseless. A single charge from a bison can shatter bone. A well-placed horn can kill. These are not passive prey. They are warriors of the plains. But survival is not about winning every fight. It is about lasting longer than the storm, and the storm does not end quickly. Miles must still be crossed. Food must still be found. The cold does not weaken. It deepens. Day after day, step after step, the herd continues its slow migration across a land that offers no mercy. The wolves follow, not always close, not always seen, but always there, waiting, because in Yellowstone, even the strongest must eventually falter, and when they do, the watchers in the storm will be ready. The storm fades, the wind settles into a low whisper across the valley, and the snow, once a violent force, now lies still. But the silence does not mean safety. It means the hunters are listening. From the shadow of a ridge, a figure stands motionless, a grey wolf. Its coat blends seamlessly into the pale world around it, its breath slow, controlled, but its eyes never stop moving, watching, calculating. Below, the valley stretches wide, dotted with movement, elk grazing cautiously, bison herds pushing forward, unaware of how closely they are being studied. The wolf does not act alone. It never does. A second shape appears, then a third, then more. The pack gathers without sound, each member slipping into place as if guided by something deeper than instinct. There is no chaos here, no confusion. Every wolf knows its role. This is not brute force. This is strategy. At the center stands the alpha pair, the leaders. They do not dominate through constant aggression, but through experience, through decision. Their gaze scans the herd below, not for the strongest, but for the weakest point in the system. A limp, a delay, a moment of hesitation. That is where the hunt begins. The signal is almost invisible, a shift in posture, a subtle movement forward, and then the pack divides. Some wolves move wide, circling, cutting off escape routes before the prey even realizes it is being hunted. Others remain hidden, waiting for the moment when panic breaks formation. Timing is everything. Below, an elk lifts its head. Too late. The wolves emerge, not in a chaotic charge, but in a coordinated wave, pressure from all sides. The herd reacts instantly, exploding into motion, hooves pounding against the frozen ground. Snow erupts into the air, turning the valley into a blur of movement and sound, but the wolves do not chase blindly. They guide, steer, control. One elk begins to lag behind, just slightly. Its movements are strong, but not perfect. The wolves see it, adjust instantly. The pack narrows, focusing all attention on a single target. Energy is conserved, effort is calculated. This is not a sprint. It is a test of endurance. The chosen elk runs, lungs burning, legs straining against the deep snow. The wolves follow relentlessly, not faster but smarter. They take turns pressing forward, each one conserving strength while another pushes the prey closer to exhaustion. Minutes pass, then more, until the moment comes. The elk falters. Just once, but once is enough. The wolves close in, their formation collapsing into precision. There is no wasted movement, no hesitation. The hunt ends as efficiently as it began. Silence returns. The pack regroups, breathing heavily but controlled. There is no celebration, only survival. The alpha pair feeds first, maintaining order even in success. Every member waits its turn. This is hierarchy, structure, balance, because without it, the pack would fail. In Yellowstone, strength alone is not enough. It is the mind that hunts, the mind that survives, and the mind that rules. But wolves are not the only hunters. The valley belongs to the wolves, until something larger decides otherwise. A heavy stillness settles over the riverbank. The air thickens, as if the land itself is holding its breath. Even the scavengers, ravens perched along the edges of a carcass, fall silent. Then it appears, a grizzly bear. It does not rush, it does not need to. Each step is slow, deliberate, carrying the weight of absolute dominance. Muscles roll beneath thick fur as it moves forward, weichel and unchallenged. Its head hangs low, nose working the air, reading scents layered across the landscape, blood, water, life, and death. Ahead, the remains of a wolf kill lie scattered across the snow. The pack is still there, feeding cautiously, their earlier precision now replaced by urgency. They know what is coming. The bear does not announce itself. It simply walks in. The wolves retreat almost instantly, not out of fear alone, but recognition. This is not a fight worth taking, not against something that outweighs them, outmuscles them, and shrugs off their numbers with sheer force. The grizzly claims the carcass without resistance. Power does not need to prove itself. With a single motion, it tears into the frozen remains, jaws crushing bone with ease. Each bite is slow, efficient, unstoppable. Steam rises from its body, mingling with the cold air as if the heat of Yellowstone itself flows through it. But the grizzly is not only a scavenger, it is a master of adaptation. As winter loosens its grip and the rivers begin to swell, the bear's focus shifts. The snow melts into rushing currents, and with them comes opportunity. Fish. At the edge of a fast-moving river, the bear stands motionless, its wishful frame casting a shadow over the water. Beneath the surface, shapes flicker, cutthroat trout fighting their way upstream. The current is relentless, but so is the instinct that drives them forward. The bear waits, still, patient. Then, in an instant, explosion. A paw strikes the water with terrifying speed. Spray erupts, sunlight catching every droplet as the bear pulls back, a writhing fish caught in its grip. One motion, one success. It feeds again. Here, strength meets precision. Season by season, the grizzly transforms. In spring, it scavenges and hunts weak prey emerging from winter. In summer, it turns to rivers and meadows, feeding on fish, roots, berries, anything that builds the fat reserves it needs. By autumn, it becomes relentless, consuming nearly everything in its path, preparing for the long sleep ahead. Because even giants must plan for survival, and survival here demands versatility. The wolves rely on strategy. The bison rely on endurance. The grizzly relies on everything. It hunts, it scavenges, it steals, it adapts, it dominates not because it is the fastest or the smartest, but because it can do it all. The river flows. The carcass disappears. The bear moves on, leaving behind nothing but silence and scattered remains. In Yellowstone, there are many hunters, but few command the land like this. The seasons do not move in straight lines across Yellowstone. They turn in cycles, and no cycle is more visible or more powerful than the great movement of the elk. It begins almost unnoticed, a shift in behavior, a gathering at the edges of valleys where food is still accessible. Then, slowly, the numbers grow. Small groups become herds, herds become rivers of movement stretching across the land, and the migration begins. Elk do not travel randomly. They follow ancient routes carved not by maps but by memory, passed down through generations, written into instinct. These paths lead them from high summer ranges down into lower valleys as winter approaches, where survival is still possible when the mountains begin to harden. The air grows colder, snow begins to fall, and the elk move. Across open plains, through dense forest edges, and into wide frozen valleys, the herd advances. Thousands of bodies in motion, hooves striking the ground in a steady rhythm that echoes through the silence of winter. Their breath rises in clouds, disappearing into the cold sky. Among them, the dominant males rise in presence. During rut season, the landscape changes again, not in terrain, but in behavior. Bull elk lift their heads high, antlers towering like skeletal crowns against the pale horizon. Then the sound begins. Bugling, a long piercing call that cuts through the wind. It is not just noise, it is declaration, territory, challenge. The sound carries across valleys, bouncing off distant ridges, answered by rivals hidden out of sight. One bull answers another. The tension builds instantly. They move toward each other, slow at first, circling, then impact. Antlers crash together with explosive force, locked in a struggle of strength and endurance. They push, twist, strain, neither willing to yield easily. But this battle is only one part of a much larger journey, because while the elk fight for dominance within the herd, something else follows them beyond it. Along the tree line, barely visible against the landscape, shadows move. Wolves. They do not interfere with the rut. They do not rush the herd. Instead, they track it, patiently, quietly, moving in parallel with the migration, reading every weakness, every delay, every sign of fatigue. The herd is strong but not untouchable. A calf struggles to keep pace. An older elk begins to fall behind during a river crossing. These are the moments the wolves wait for, not chaos, but opportunity created by exhaustion and movement. The migration itself becomes a test of endurance, of unity, of timing. Snow deepens as the herd pushes forward. Rivers must be crossed, their freezing waters cutting through already weakened bodies. One by one, the elk enter the current, fighting against the force that pulls at their legs, their strength fading with every step. On the far bank, they regroup, but not all make it across cleanly, and the wolves continue to follow, never rushing, never wasting energy. Because in Yellowstone, migration is not escape. It is survival in motion. And every journey forward is also a journey through danger. Winter arrives without sound, no warning, no signal, no mercy. One day the land is moving, alive with herds, rivers flowing, wind carrying scent and sound across open valleys. The next, everything begins to slow, then stop. Cold spreads first through the night, creeping into the soil, into the bones of the land itself. Frost forms along the edges of rivers, thin at first, delicate like glass, then thicker, heavier, until the water beneath can no longer move freely, and Yellowstone begins to freeze. The transformation is absolute. Grass disappears beneath layers of snow, trails vanish, familiar routes become unrecognizable. The world turns into a blank, endless surface where every step demands effort, and every movement costs energy that cannot easily be replaced. For the animals, this is not simply a season, it is pressure. An elk moves through deep snow, its legs sinking with each step, forcing it to lift its body higher than normal just to move forward. Its breathing is heavy now, visible in the air, each exhale a loss of warmth it cannot afford. It stops briefly, digging through frozen layers for food that is no longer easy to find. There is nothing dramatic about its struggle, only persistence. Nearby, a frozen river stretches across the valley. What was once a flowing lifeline is now a solid barrier of ice and silence. Beneath it, water still moves in narrow channels, hidden from sight. Around it, animals gather, drawn not by comfort, but by necessity. A bison lowers its massive head, pushing through snow and ice to reach what little grass remains underneath. Its body is strong, built for endurance, but even strength has limits when the land offers nothing to consume. Each bite is harder to find than the last, and every day the margin between survival and collapse becomes thinner. Not all who begin winter will see its end. Some slow down too much. Some fail to find enough food. Some simply run out of energy to continue. And when that moment comes, there is no chase, no confrontation, no struggle, only stillness. The land takes them quietly. Even predators are not spared from this pressure. A lone wolf moves across the frozen landscape, ribs faintly visible beneath its coat. The hunt has become more difficult, prey more scarce, distances longer. Every decision now carries weight. Every wasted step is a risk. It pauses at the edge of a valley, scanning the emptiness. There is movement somewhere far off, but distance alone can decide survival. Too far, and the energy spent chasing is greater than the reward gained. The calculation is constant, unforgiving. Because in winter, even hunters must choose carefully, and sometimes not hunt at all. Above, ravens circle slowly, watching, waiting, not rushing anything. They understand what the cold does. They know it does not need to pursue. It only needs to remain. Day by day, the landscape tightens its grip. Snow deepens, wind sharpens, sound disappears into the white, and life continues only in fragments, because winter does not kill like a predator does. It does not target, it does not chase, it simply removes what cannot endure, and in Yellowstone, endurance is never guaranteed. Winter does not end with a single moment. It loosens its grip, slowly, almost reluctantly. The first signs are subtle, a faint dripping beneath the silence. Ice begins to fracture along the edges of rivers, breaking apart in quiet cracks that echo through the still air. Snow softens under the growing warmth, collapsing into slush, revealing dark earth beneath. The land begins to breathe again. Across the valleys, patches of green push through the melting white. Fragile at first, almost insignificant, but unstoppable. What was buried now rises, fed by the very forces that once seemed to suffocate it, and with this change, life returns. In a sheltered hollow, a bison cow stands motionless, her massive frame steady against the lingering cold. Beside her, a newborn calf struggles to stand. Its legs tremble, unsure, folding beneath its weight as it tries again and again. The world it has entered is still harsh, still unpredictable, but it does not wait. The mother nudges gently, urging it upward. Instinct demands movement. Within minutes, the calf finds its balance. Within hours, it must be able to follow. Because in Yellowstone, even new life must be ready. Steam rises faintly from the ground nearby, curling into the cool air. The warmth of the earth seeps upward, softening patches of land where the first grasses grow strongest. It is here that life gathers first, where survival has the smallest advantage. Not far away, hidden in tall, damp grass, an elk calf lies perfectly still. Its coat, speckled with pale spots, blends seamlessly with the shifting light and shadow of early spring. It does not move, it does not call. Its survival depends entirely on remaining unseen. Its mother grazes at a distance, lifting her head often, scanning, listening. Every sound matters. Because spring does not remove danger, it reshapes it. Predators return with renewed strength. Wolves move through the thawing valleys, no longer slowed by deep snow. Their energy has returned, and with it their precision. Where once they struggled, now they thrive, and they know exactly where to look. Newborns are everywhere. A calf shifts slightly in the grass. The movement is small, almost nothing. But in Yellowstone, nothing goes unnoticed for long. Still, life surges forward. Birdsong fills the air once more, breaking the silence winter left behind. Small animals emerge from burrows, blinking into the light. Rivers swell with meltwater, cutting through the landscape with renewed force. The plains, once empty, begin to move again. Herds grow stronger with each passing day. Calves learn quickly how to stand, how to run, how to stay close. The weak have already been taken by winter. Those that remain now carry the future. Spring is not gentle, it is urgent. It builds rapidly, relentlessly, layering life over loss. Because in Yellowstone, survival is not just about enduring the hardest season. It is about taking advantage of the moment when the land gives back. The snow continues to melt. The ground softens, the air warms, and across the landscape in countless hidden places, new life begins. When the great herds move on and the valleys fall quiet, another world begins to awaken. It does not announce itself. It does not charge across open plains or leave behind obvious signs. It moves in silence. In Yellowstone, not all hunters rely on strength in numbers or overwhelming power. Some depend on something far more precise: invisibility. As daylight fades, shadows stretch across the landscape. The open ground, once dominated by massive herds and roaming packs, becomes a place of concealment, where every movement is hidden and every opportunity is fleeting. High along a rocky ridge, a cougar watches, alone, no pack, no support, only patience. Its body is perfectly still, muscles coiled beneath a sleek frame, eyes fixed on movement below. An elk grazes near the edge of a tree line, unaware that it has already been selected. The cougar does not rush. It studies distance, wind, terrain. Then, slowly, it begins to move. Each step is placed with absolute precision. No sound, no wasted energy. It uses the land itself, rocks, dips, shadows to close the gap. Closer, then closer still. This is not a chase, it is an ambush. In a sudden burst of power, the cougar launches forward, fast, silent, decisive. The distance disappears in seconds. There is no long pursuit, no prolonged struggle. It must end quickly, because unlike wolves, the cougar cannot afford failure. Every hunt is a risk. Every mistake costs energy that may not be recovered. Elsewhere, smaller hunters begin their work. A red fox moves lightly through the grass, its ears constantly adjusting, listening for the faintest sound beneath the surface. Beneath the soil, hidden tunnels carry the movement of small prey. The fox stops, listens, then leaps. It dives headfirst into the ground, disappearing for a split second before emerging again, prey secured in its jaws. One motion, one success. Nearby, a coyote moves with quiet confidence across the open terrain. It is neither as powerful as the wolf nor as precise as the cougar, but it does not need to be. It survives through adaptability, rodents, carrion, leftovers from larger kills. Opportunity is everywhere for those who can take it. As night deepens, their advantage grows. Darkness transforms Yellowstone into a world of subtle motion. Eyes reflect faint light. Shapes pass through tall grass unnoticed. Sounds sharpen. Every rustle, every step, every breath carrying meaning. The hidden hunters thrive here, not because they dominate, but because they remain unseen. They exist between the giants, between the chaos of the hunt and the stillness of the land. Because survival in Yellowstone is not only about power, it is about precision. The cougar fades back into shadow. The fox disappears into the grass. The coyote continues its endless search, and the night remains alive, quiet, watchful, and always hunting. Death does not end a story in Yellowstone. It begins another. High above the valleys, where the air is thin and the ground feels distant, shapes circle against the pale sky. At first they seem effortless, gliding on invisible currents, wings stretched wide, barely moving. But they are not drifting. They are searching. An eagle tilts slightly, adjusting to the wind, its sharp eyes scanning the land below with absolute precision. From this height, nothing escapes notice. A flicker of movement, a break in the snow, the stillness of something that should not be still. It sees everything. And when it decides, it acts. The dive is sudden. Wings fold. The body drops like a falling blade, cutting through the air with controlled speed, faster, closer, locked onto its target. At the final moment, wings spread again, talons extended, impact, a single strike. If it succeeds, the reward is immediate. If it fails, it rises again, returning to the sky, where patience remains its greatest advantage. But not all hunters of the sky rely on killing. Some wait. On the ground below, a carcass lies in the open. It may be an elk brought down by wolves or an animal that simply did not survive the winter. The cause no longer matters, only the opportunity. The first to arrive are the ravens. Dark shapes descend cautiously, landing at a distance before moving closer in short, deliberate steps. They do not rush, they watch. Their calls echo across the valley, sharp, deliberate, almost purposeful. Because they are not alone. More ravens gather quickly, then more. They feed in bursts, tearing at exposed flesh, slipping into spaces too small for larger scavengers. Every movement is quick, efficient, alert. They eat, then pause, look up, listen. They know others are coming. Above them, more birds begin to circle. Eagles return. Unlike the ravens, they do not hesitate for long. With a powerful descent, they land near the carcass, their presence immediately shifting the balance. Wings spread wide, they claim space, forcing smaller scavengers to retreat. Power asserts itself even here. But nothing in Yellowstone remains uncontested for long. The feeding becomes a quiet competition. No loud battles, no drawn-out fights, just constant pressure, shifting positions, each animal taking what it can before something larger arrives. Because it always does. The carcass will not last. Piece by piece it disappears, consumed not by a single predator, but by many. What began as one life now supports countless others. Nothing is wasted. Even the bones will eventually break down, returning to the earth. Above, the sky clears again. The circling shapes drift away one by one, their work done for now. Because in Yellowstone, death is never an ending. It is a transfer, a moment where the sky meets the ground and life continues through what remains. Not all life in Yellowstone moves across land, some of it flows. Cutting through valleys, winding between forests, carving deep into rock shaped over thousands of years, the Yellowstone River moves with quiet persistence. Even in a place defined by fire beneath the ground and conflict above it, water remains the constant thread, linking everything. Here life gathers. At first, the river seems calm. Its surface reflects the sky, broken only by ripples that drift outward in widening circles. But beneath that surface there is movement, purposeful, urgent, fish. As the seasons shift, the river becomes a pathway for one of Yellowstone's most important events. Trout begin their journey upstream, pushing against the current with steady determination. Their bodies flash beneath the water, silver and quick, navigating rocks, sudden drops, and relentless flow. This is not just movement, it is survival. They travel to spawn, driven by instinct older than the river itself. Every obstacle they overcome brings them closer to that goal, but also closer to danger, because the river does not belong to them alone. Along its banks, a massive figure waits. A grizzly bear stands motionless at the edge of the current, its gaze fixed on the water. It does not rush. It does not waste energy. Its patience is as powerful as its strength. The fish continue their journey, unaware. Then, in a sudden burst of motion, the stillness breaks. The bear strikes. A powerful paw cuts into the water, sending spray into the air. For a moment, everything is chaos, ripples, flashes, movement. Then the bear lifts its head, a struggling fish caught firmly in its grip. One precise action, one successful hunt. The river continues to flow, but for the bear, everything has changed. It feeds. Nearby, another bear moves along the bank, watching, waiting for its own opportunity. There is no shortage of competition here. Where food gathers, predators follow. And where predators gather, tension is never far behind. But the river offers more than just food for the powerful. Smaller life thrives here as well. Birds line the edges, watching for exposed fish. Insects hover above the surface, forming the base of a food chain that stretches far beyond what can be seen at a glance. Even the plants along the riverbanks depend on its presence, drawing nutrients from the water that sustains them. The river is not just a place, it is a system, a moving network of life where energy passes from one form to another, where nothing exists in isolation. The fish feed the bears, the remains feed scavengers, the nutrients return to the soil, and the cycle continues. Even in winter, when much of the land freezes, parts of the river endure, kept alive by the heat rising from beneath Yellowstone's surface. These open waters become lifelines, drawing animals from across the landscape, because where there is water, there is survival. The current never stops. It moves through every season, through every change, carrying life forward. And in Yellowstone, the river does more than shape the land. It sustains everything that lives within it. In Yellowstone, not all destruction comes from cold or from the predators that roam the land. Some of it arrives as fire. It begins with a spark. A single lightning strike cuts through a dry summer sky, hitting the ground with sudden force. For a moment, nothing seems to change. Then a thin line of smoke rises, barely visible against the vast landscape, and the transformation begins. Flames take hold slowly at first, feeding on dry grass, fallen branches, and brittle undergrowth left behind by previous seasons. Then the wind shifts, and everything changes. The fire spreads. What was once small becomes unstoppable. Flames race across the land, climbing through forests, leaping from tree to tree, consuming everything in their path. The air fills with smoke, thick and heavy, turning daylight into a dim, flickering haze. Animals react instantly. Elk break into motion, moving quickly away from the advancing heat. Bison follow, their massive bodies pushing forward with urgency. Birds rise into the sky, escaping the smoke. Even the smallest creatures, hidden beneath rocks or buried in soil, are forced to flee or survive where they are. There is no resisting fire. It does not slow, it does not choose, it takes. Trees that stood for decades collapse into ash within minutes. Grasslands are stripped bare. Entire sections of forest are reduced to blackened ground, silent and lifeless in the aftermath. For a moment, it feels like complete destruction. But in Yellowstone, destruction is never the end. When the flames pass, the landscape is unrecognizable. Charred trunks stand like shadows against the horizon. The ground is dark, scorched, still warm. Smoke lingers in the air, drifting slowly across the open space. Then slowly, the change begins. Rain falls, soft at first, then steady. It cools the ground, settles the ash, and begins something new. Beneath the surface, life that seemed destroyed has only been waiting. Seeds that require heat to open now begin to grow. Nutrients released by the fire enrich the soil, making it stronger than before. Sunlight reaches the ground more easily, feeding new growth that could not survive in dense forest. Within days, green shoots appear. Within weeks, the land begins to transform. Animals return. Grazers arrive first, drawn to fresh vegetation. With them come predators, following the return of movement and opportunity. The cycle begins again. Fire does not simply destroy, it reshapes. It clears what is old, making space for what comes next. It restores balance, preventing any one part of the ecosystem from taking over completely. In Yellowstone, even chaos has purpose. The land burns, then heals, The flames disappear and life returns. Because here, destruction is not the opposite of creation, it is part of it. Not all life in Yellowstone can be seen. Some of it exists beyond the reach of the eye, yet it shapes everything. At the edge of a hot spring, the ground appears alive with color. Bands of orange, yellow, green, and deep blue stretch outward in delicate patterns, as if painted across the surface. The water shimmers with heat, steam rising in soft waves that blur the line between water and air. It looks still, but it is not. It is alive. Within these pools, where temperatures can approach boiling, life thrives in forms unlike anything else in the park. These are microorganisms, tiny, resilient, and ancient. They survive in conditions that would destroy most other life, and yet here they flourish. Each color represents a different form of life. Near the center of the spring, where the water is hottest, only the most heat-resistant organisms can survive. The colors are often pale or deep blue, where life exists at the edge of its limits. Moving outward, where the temperature becomes slightly cooler, new layers appear, orange, yellow, and green, each formed by different microbial communities. It is a living map of survival, a system defined entirely by heat. These microorganisms form dense mats along the edges of the springs. Layered and complex, they feed on minerals rising from deep underground. Instead of relying only on sunlight, many of them use chemical energy, turning heat and minerals into life. This is life in its simplest form, yet also one of its most powerful. The heat from Yellowstone's volcanic core does more than create dramatic landscapes. It builds environments where life can exist under extreme conditions, organisms that have adapted over thousands of years to survive where nothing else can. Even the rising steam carries traces of this hidden world. Microscopic particles move through the air, invisible but constantly present, connecting water, land, and atmosphere in ways that are rarely seen. While large animals roam the plains, hunting, migrating, surviving, this unseen world continues quietly beneath them, unnoticed, but essential. Without these microorganisms, the chemistry of the springs would change, the balance would shift, the colors would disappear. The system that supports so much of Yellowstone's uniqueness would begin to break down. They are the smallest forms of life, yet among the most important. At the surface, the springs bubble and steam, their colors shifting with light and temperature. To the eye, they are beautiful, mysterious, even dangerous. But beneath that surface lies something deeper, a world without noise, without visible motion, a world that exists at the limits of life and continues to thrive. Because in Yellowstone, survival is not always about size or strength. Sometimes it belongs to what cannot be seen. In Yellowstone, nothing exists in isolation. Every life is connected. Every movement triggers a response. Every death feeds something else. The entire ecosystem is held together by a fragile balance of power, one that constantly shifts but never fully breaks. At the center of this balance are the predators and the prey. For years, this system was disrupted. Wolves once disappeared from Yellowstone entirely, removed by human intervention. And when they were gone, the balance began to collapse in ways that were not immediately visible. Elk populations grew rapidly. Without pressure from one of their most efficient predators, they moved more freely, fed more heavily, and stayed longer in key valleys. Over time, this constant grazing changed the land itself. Riverbanks weakened, vegetation disappeared. Entire areas of habitat began to degrade. The absence of one species had reshaped the entire ecosystem. Then they returned. The reintroduction of wolves changed everything again, but this time in the opposite direction. Not through simple reduction of numbers, but through behavior. The elk no longer moved without caution. They avoided certain valleys. They traveled in tighter groups. They spent less time in vulnerable areas like open riverbanks. This shift alone allowed vegetation to recover in places that had been heavily overgrazed. Trees began to grow again along the rivers. Willows returned. Birds followed. Even the flow of the rivers changed as the soil stabilized once more. The impact spread far beyond a single predator or prey relationship. Wolves also created opportunity for other species. Their kills became food for scavengers, ravens, foxes, bears, and insects. What was once a single death became a source of life for many others. In Yellowstone, nothing is wasted. The presence of wolves did not simply control elk numbers, it reshaped movement, behavior, geography itself. But this balance is never static. Predators still hunt for survival, not control. Prey still adapt, still migrate, still test the limits of the system. Every interaction is part of a constant adjustment, an ongoing negotiation between life and death. A wolf pack moves through a valley at dawn, scanning the horizon. Far away, elk herds shift position, already reacting to unseen pressure. Neither side fully dominates, neither side disappears, because if one does, the system changes again. And not always in a stable way. Yellowstone survives not because it is peaceful, but because it is balanced through tension, through constant feedback between hunger and caution, strength and vulnerability, pursuit and escape. Even the land itself responds to this balance. Vegetation grows or retreats depending on grazing pressure. Rivers shift course as banks strengthen or weaken. Fire resets what becomes too stable. Everything is connected. Everything reacts, and everything depends on everything else. This is not a fixed system. It is a living one, always adjusting, always shifting, always in motion. Because in Yellowstone, balance is not something that is achieved. It is something that must be constantly maintained. Section 16, Night in Yellowstone, 500 words. As the sun disappears beyond the horizon, Yellowstone does not rest. It changes. Light fades from the valleys, and with it, the world of day begins to withdraw. The great herds settle into quieter movement. The open plains, once filled with motion, grow still. But the silence is only an illusion, because night belongs to something else. Under a sky scattered with stars, the landscape transforms into a realm of shadow and sound. Shapes become indistinct, boundaries dissolve. What cannot be seen must be sensed, and life continues in ways the daylight hides. Through the lens of thermal vision, the darkness comes alive. Heat reveals what the eye cannot. Against the cold ground, bodies glow, soft outlines of movement drifting across the land. A herd of elk appears as a cluster of warm forms, tightly grouped, conserving heat, conserving safety. Beyond them, something moves alone, a predator. A wolf crosses the valley, its body a pale glow against the colder earth. It moves with quiet purpose, head low, scanning. Every step is deliberate, every pause meaningful. In the stillness of night, sound travels farther, and even the smallest mistake can be heard. Then, from the distance, a call. A long, rising howl cuts through the darkness. Another answers, then more. The pack is gathering. The sound echoes across the valley, bouncing off unseen ridges, filling the night with a presence that cannot be ignored. It is not just communication, it is coordination, location, territory. A signal that the hunt may soon begin. Elsewhere, smaller movements unfold. A fox moves through the grass, its body low, ears alert to the faintest rustle beneath the surface. A coyote pauses at the edge of a clearing, listening before stepping forward again. Owls glide silently above, their wings making no sound as they pass through the air. Every species adapts to the darkness in its own way. Some rely on sound, some on scent, some on vision beyond what humans can perceive. But all are shaped by the same condition, limited visibility and increased risk. For prey, night offers both danger and protection. Darkness can conceal movement, but it can also hide approaching threats. An elk lifts its head suddenly, sensing something it cannot see. The herd tightens, instinctively closing ranks. For predators, the night provides cover, but it also demands precision. Mistakes are harder to recover from. Distance is harder to judge. Timing becomes critical. The balance continues, even in the dark. The howls fade, the movements slow. The valley returns to a quieter rhythm, though never truly still. Above, the stars remain constant, watching over a landscape that never fully sleeps. Because in Yellowstone, night is not an ending, it is another phase of survival, another layer of the same ongoing struggle, where life moves unseen, where sound replaces sight, and where, beneath the endless sky, the hunt never truly stops. Got it, fully clean English, no mixing. Here's the corrected section. Beneath the silence, it remains, unseen, unheard, unstoppable. Far below the valleys, the rivers, and the roaming herds, a vast chamber of heat shifts in darkness. The same force that shaped Yellowstone, the same force that feeds its life, continues its slow, relentless movement. It has never stopped. We have watched predators hunt, herds migrate, seasons change, life rise, fall and rise again, but all of it exists because of something deeper, something far more powerful. The ground here is not as solid as it appears. In places it trembles, so slightly it can barely be felt, a quiet reminder that the Earth is alive, constantly adjusting under pressure that builds over time. Heat rises through cracks in the crust, escaping through geysers, hot springs and steam vents, small releases controlled for now. Beneath it all lies a massive reservoir of molten rock, stretching for miles, shifting slowly, carrying immense energy with no easy escape. It does not erupt often. It does not need to. Its presence alone shapes everything above it. Geysers erupt in steady rhythms. Steam rises from the ground. Rivers stay warm in places where they should freeze. Even in the harshest winters, life continues because the heat below never fades. It is the hidden engine of Yellowstone. But what if that balance changed? What if the pressure built beyond control? The thought lingers not as an immediate threat, but as a possibility. A force so large it is difficult to fully comprehend. If it were to erupt, the transformation would not be small. It would be absolute. Ash would fill the sky. Forests would disappear. Rivers would be buried. The delicate balance of life that exists here would be erased in moments. And yet, this is not a new story. Long ago, eruptions of immense power shaped this very land. The valleys, the plateaus, the geothermal systems, all were formed through destruction on a scale almost impossible to imagine. What we see today is the result of that past, and now life thrives above it. Bison cross the plains, wolves move through the snow, rivers flow, forests grow. The cycle continues, steady and uninterrupted, unaware or simply unchanged. Because the supervolcano does not act with intention, it does not choose when to create or destroy. It simply exists, a constant force beneath a constantly changing world. Steam rises quietly into the cold air. The ground remains warm in unexpected places. The signs are always present, subtle but real. A reminder that Yellowstone is not just a wilderness. It is a system built on instability, a balance between creation and destruction, between life above and fire below. And as long as that force remains, everything here continues to exist in its shadow. Nothing in Yellowstone stands still. Not the land, not the rivers, not the lives that move across it. Everything here is part of a cycle, one that does not begin and does not end. It simply continues. In the early light of morning, a newborn bison takes its first unsteady steps. Its legs tremble beneath it, unsure, fragile. The world around it is vast and unpredictable, filled with movement it does not yet understand. But it stands. It follows. It begins. Nearby, a wolf pack moves through the valley, silent and focused. Hunger drives them forward, shaping every decision. They are not thinking of beginnings or endings, only survival. The hunt unfolds, a chase through open ground, a moment of weakness, a life taken. And with it, another continues. What falls does not disappear. It becomes part of something larger. The body feeds the pack. What remains feeds scavengers. What is left returns to the soil. Nothing is wasted. The land absorbs everything. Seasons turn and the cycle repeats in new forms. Spring brings life. Summer builds strength. Autumn tests it. Winter strips it away. Each phase leads into the next, not as separate events, but as connected pieces of a single process. An elk herd grows through the warmth of summer, calves gaining strength, learning the patterns of movement. By winter, those same herds are tested. The weak fall behind. The strong endure. And when spring returns, new life takes their place. This is not cruelty, it is balance. Every life here exists within limits set by the land itself. Food, temperature, space, each factor shaping what survives and what does not. Predators do not overtake the prey completely. Prey do not outgrow the land that supports them, because if they did, the system would fail. Even the ground beneath them follows this pattern. Heat rises from deep below, shaping rivers, feeding plant life, sustaining warmth through the coldest months. Fire clears what has grown too dense. Water carries nutrients across the landscape. Every element plays a role. Everything returns. Everything is reused. Everything continues. A tree falls in a storm. It decays slowly, becoming shelter for insects, food for smaller organisms, and eventually part of the soil that supports new growth. What was once standing becomes the foundation for something else. Life does not move in straight lines here. It moves in circles, unbroken, unending. A wolf grows old. Its pace slows. Its strength fades. One day it can no longer keep up with the pack. Its story ends quietly, without drama, but even then, it remains part of the system because nothing truly leaves. It only changes form. In Yellowstone, birth leads to survival. Survival leads to death. Death leads to renewal. And renewal leads back to birth again and again and again. An endless cycle shaped by forces both visible and unseen. Not controlled, not stopped, only continued. For thousands of years, Yellowstone has existed without human control, its cycles shaped by fire, ice, predators, and time. But now, another force has entered the system: us. Unlike the wolves, the bears, or the herds that move across this land, humans do not simply adapt to Yellowstone, we change it, sometimes for the better. Yellowstone was one of the first landscapes in the world to be protected on this scale, a recognition that some places are too important to lose. The creation of a national park preserved not just the beauty of the land, but the processes that define it. Predators were given space to return. Wolves, once removed, were reintroduced, restoring balance to ecosystems that had begun to unravel. Rivers stabilized, vegetation recovered. Entire chains of life were rebuilt through a single decision. Conservation efforts continue to protect species that might otherwise disappear. Bison populations, once pushed to the edge, now roam more freely. Habitats are monitored, studied, and defended. For the first time, humans have not only taken from this land, but chosen to protect it. And yet, that protection comes with pressure. Millions of people visit Yellowstone each year. Roads cut through valleys once shaped only by migration. Vehicles replace silence with constant motion. Trails carve through fragile areas, bringing humans closer to a system that does not always respond well to disturbance. Animals adjust, but not always successfully. Some become too familiar with human presence. Others are pushed away from critical habitats. The balance, once shaped only by nature, now must account for something unpredictable: us. And beyond what can be seen immediately, a larger influence grows. Climate change. Winters shift. Snowfall patterns change. Summers grow warmer and longer. These changes affect everything from the timing of migration to the availability of water. Rivers run differently. Vegetation grows under new conditions. The entire system begins to adjust to a climate that is no longer stable. The effects are gradual, but real, and they reach every level of the ecosystem, from the smallest microorganisms in the hot springs to the largest predators that roam the plains. Even the hidden forces beneath Yellowstone, the geothermal systems, are not entirely isolated from long-term environmental change. The balance remains, but it is more fragile than before, because human impact is not like any other force in Yellowstone. It does not follow natural cycles. It accelerates them, alters them, interrupts them, and yet there is still choice. Protection can continue. Conservation can expand. Awareness can grow. The same influence that disrupts can also defend. The future of Yellowstone is not fixed. It is shaped by decisions. Every path taken, every boundary respected. Every effort to preserve what exists here matters. Because Yellowstone is not just a place of the past. It is a living system, still evolving, still responding, still depending on balance. The question is no longer whether humans are part of Yellowstone. We already are. The question is what role we choose to play. Because this land does not adapt to us without consequence, and its survival is no longer separate from our actions. Yellowstone does not belong to us. We belong to its future.